All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Today in Space. A very exciting episode today. We get to talk about one of my favorite things in the world, spacecraft. It's the whole reason why I went to school for aerospace engineering. It's why this podcast exists. It's because I love the things that bring people to space. And we're going to talk to the authors and illustrators of the Complete Book of Spacecraft. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being on today. I'm very, very excited to talk with you.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you.
We are really glad to be here today.
Well, please, one by one, Giuseppe, if you don't mind starting, let's introduce yourselves, tell a bit of your origin story to the folks here, and then we'll just go around the room.
Okay, folks. My name is Giuseppe De Chiara. I'm Italian, as you may probably learn from my accent. I've been a space nerd, a space geek, when I was kind, probably in the cradle. I always been in love with three things: aircraft, spacecraft, and to make drawing about them. I have a degree in architecture with a space thesis, graduation thesis. I started very early to work in space companies. Currently, I am a career of technical manager in one of the biggest space company in Italy. And also I have the chance to publish and realize with my friends, Michael and Davide, several books about this topic, and the chance to illustrate them. I have to say, there is a lot of illustrators that are skilled than me, for sure. I have a little advantage. I work on the field, so I can make some reverse engineering, and I'm in a position to understand what I draw. This is probably one of the best limitations. The people that is very skilled to draw something, but not something they understand or fully understand.
Mm-hmm.
And I always try to this kind of reverse engineering in my artworks, to make clear to the people how the stuff works. I started to compose my own lexicon, graphical lexicon, and all my artworks use always the same feature in the way that you can relate the same elements from different spacecraft, rockets, or whatever else, because you have a sort of graphic alphabet that you are familiar with my own artworks, and we find among them in each book. I decided to do so because I decided to do so because each of my book is the book I want to buy and never found in the scaffold. That's very simple. On the shelves, that wasn't. Otherwise, I don't want to make books that are copied that other people, probably better than us, already done. Say that, I had the chance to find a good book producer like Quarto in his Butter book, and I have to thank also the great team that is behind us. That is Dennis Pernu, Joanna Wilklund, all the other people that are helped us to make this very, very, very good product. I have anything else to say. I want to pass the words to my friends, Michael and Davide, and they can introduce themselves. Only to not monopolize all the hour that remains.
Thank you. Yeah, Michael, why don't you start?
Okay. Well, I came to air and space history accidentally. I trained as a historian in colonial U.S. at USC, and I got a doctorate there, and then I wanted to get a job, which I guess is kind of normal. And I had a friend, actually my mentor at USC, knew someone in the Air Force History program, recommended me, and for whatever reason, they let me in, even though I didn't have knowledge of it. So over the next 5 years, I learned, and gradually I could see it's a better field than colonial history because it isn't so densely studied by historians. So I started writing. My first book came out in the mid-'80s, and I've been doing it ever since. It was an easy transition, I found, from air to space, and I like to write in both. To use Giuseppe's word of a few minutes ago, I basically regard myself as a storyteller. And that's what it's about. Try to tell the story in a way that it appeals to me, that I think will appeal to others. It's clear, fluid, and interesting. And working with Giuseppe and Davide has been a joy. They've opened my minds to different ways of telling the story. And I have to, I'll end with this, but this is not the first time I've opened a box that's arrived home, and there are the books in it after a lot of work. And that first feeling of picking up a book, I don't know if you guys have this feeling. There's worry. Is it going to be good? What you expect? This book really is the first book that I've picked up and said to myself, this is it. This was done right. And that's the publisher. Tight spine, beautiful cover, beautiful artwork, feels good in the hand, heavy paper. Giuseppe and I can tell you about what happens when you don't get thick paper and illustration,
Mm,
bleed through.
no.
None of that here. And it's a joy. So it's a happy occasion to be with you. And it's also the 99th anniversary of the first liftoff of liquid rocketry with Robert Goddard. So it's a good year to launch, huh?
Definitely.
Okay, that's a little about me.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. Well,
Davide, let's
Yeah,
start
so I
with
guess
you. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so I've always been interested in space since a young age. Spacecraft, astronomy, airplanes has been a constant of my life, I must say. I studied aerospace engineering. I'm Italian, like Giuseppe, although from a different part of the country. So yeah, I studied aerospace engineering in Italy, and then I moved abroad, and I've been living in the UK, United Kingdom, for 15 or 16 years now. I don't recall. I work in the aviation industry. At the moment, I'm a senior stress engineer for a large aircraft manufacturer. But
Awesome.
as I always say to my colleagues, I consider aircraft like spacecraft flying low and slow. So my
Yeah.
first love is always airplanes. Sorry, spacecraft. By chance years ago, some probably 10, 12 years ago, I don't remember now, I had the chance to publish my first book on the space shuttle, and because I always loved the space shuttle program, and for me, writing a book on the topic was a way to consolidate my knowledge on the topic and learn more, because there's nothing better than you know uh, learning something and then trying to explain it to others in order for you to remember it.
Yep.
And then after that, just other books came along. So I didn't have in mind to become a writer, but things turn out differently, and I'm glad. Now I'm almost close to 6 books. So
Wow, congrats.
so yeah, so that is nothing compared to Michael. Obviously, Michael is is another level.
oh, yeah,
But
and you're half my
yeah.
age. So you're at least as far along as I am. Oh,
so yeah, so that's my story in 2 minutes.
Well, thank you all so much for sharing. I guess to give you my short one, since we're all meeting each other.
yeah,
So I went to school at Worcester Polytech, so Robert Goddard's area,
yeah.
and went to school out of the pure passion of I love the space shuttle and I'd like to work on it. This was 2008. The shuttle retires while I'm in school getting my degree, and then it was what do I even want to work on now, and the job market changed. So this podcast started as my way to keep up with things like you were talking about, to kind of like further your knowledge and explain it, tell it, teach it to other people. Um, and now I've been doing that for 10 years, and so I've watched us go from the lows of space shuttle retirement, what's going to happen with the agency, to, well, a few years ago, what I would consider the peak of national interest with, the space industry, and watched SpaceX develop, Blue Origin, Rocket Lab, all these companies, and the world market expand as well. Private industry making it, like, changing the way we do space. So in a lot of ways, I'm very happy that I've stuck with this, because this lets me talk to people like yourselves, right, who are involved in it, who are telling the stories about it. This book alone, like, I love spacecraft and how much they tell a story, and how you guys laid it out is really cool because you talk about the eras of the ages of the space, era, and when you look at history through the rocket and what those things enabled, it really tells a really interesting story, and that's how you guys have this set up. So, how did you get to the position where you told the story like that, or was that always in mind?
Um, the idea of the book was Giuseppe's. The original book, which is called Spacecraft. I divert just for a minute here, just to make
Sure.
that clear. I think I had something to do with the organization, but the idea for the book was originally Giuseppe's. He pitched it to Quarto. They said, we'd like to touch up the book proposal. So they sent it to me. I worked on it a little bit. I think we may have lost Giuseppe, huh?
I think the video cut out.
Uh, shall I continue?
I can always patch Giuseppe back in if you want to keep going. Yeah.
Okay. And I worked on it a little bit. The publisher said yes and put us together. That's how the first edition of this book began. Um, what historians look for is a way to tell a story. And Davide's been down this road himself.
Mm.
It's rendering order out of chaos. So
Mm.
what's a way of rendering it so that you see this is what historians look for, change through time, not the static past,
Mm.
but the past that moves toward the present. So I thought putting it in three buckets, if you
Mm.
will allow the reader to see at a glance, looking at the table of contents, oh, this is the direction they're going to go in.
Mm.
And it brings order, and it combines similar things in propinquity to each other. So the reader will see that too. And then I try to tell the story in a way that cut across so the reader, and I don't know how successful this part is, so that the reader who is just looking for the X-15 can read that and read it and understand,
Mm.
or the reader who wants to cut across and read it straight through has enough breadcrumbs piece by piece to be able to understand them. The origination, Giuseppe is the originator of the idea.
As I say, the very first idea of spacecraft was my one, because it was the book that I never met. I mean, they were always found a lot of nice book about space, but there is a shift. I mean,
Mm.
from one side, I mean, in the current panorama of publication of book, you find out ultra specialized publication about the number of the tiles of the space shuttle, numbering one by one, 36,000 of them.
Mm.
Or otherwise, you find out some childish books about, but comprehensive about space, but
Mm.
not so for you, for your I say adult reader, adult audience.
Yeah.
I mean, what I really wanted was the book that I found in late 70s or late 60s, like Kenneth Gatland's book. I don't know if you want. There was a series of books,
Mm.
adult book, but made in very appealing way.
Mm.
I'm talking about space. Talking about space in 360 degree. I don't want to have only the United States NASA history or the Russian history.
Yeah.
My idea was to put all together in a very big, large picture, or better, like a big grid fresco. I mean,
Mm.
all together in space. And this means that today, and this is the reason for this second edition, there is no more from one side the United States and from another side Russia or Soviet Union. But you have other actors, other players like China, India,
Mm-hmm.
European, of course, but also private ones. they are acting like a sort of super entity. I mean, SpaceX, that was very, very, very small when it was born, now is a sort of superpower of space.
Yep.
He can decide, Musk can decide to put in orbit a payload from United States or not. This make a big difference. Okay. So this fresco became larger and larger. And this means another book with more pages, more stories to tell about it. Probably in future, I don't know, I hope so, we'll have also a third edition that probably we met along the way. Other nations, other actors, other player comes in. Because in space, there is a lot of space for everyone, you know.
Yes.
Okay. That's the idea that lies behind the first spacecraft and also this second edition. I wanted to do so.
I love that you did. And one of the cool things that you can do when you do that kind of an approach, the thing that struck me is like the difference between the American and the Russian, like the first age, how different the designs are, you know, in so many different ways. It's more, the Russian stuff is a little bit more fluid, almost like organic, and the US stuff is very industrial, and kind of representative of the planes that they flew leading up to it, you know, which is just fascinating. You don't get that in the classic
You're
telling.
right, because there is a very strong tie among the aeronautical industries and the space industries. In let's say ideal world, we should have aircraft that was flying faster and higher, faster and higher, faster and higher up to orbit. And the NASA with the X series started this kind of fashion. The X1, the X2, the X15, and after the X20. But something happened. Something happened because in a certain point of the mid-50s came to life the ICBM, the Intercontinental Ballistic Missile. I want to put a nuclear warhead on you on the other side of the world. And this make a sort of shortcut that severed the strong tie between aeronautic and astronautic, because someone got with the idea that turn off the warhead, put the man with a light suit, a sort of capsule, and go in space. And this is the basis of astronautics. This is a sort of a strange inception also, because in ideal world we should take an aircraft and go to orbit, like the X-30 Orient Express.
Right.
For me, that was right up in the 80s, was a sort of big idea, and never realized. And now we have the probably definitive one of rocketry. SpaceX demonstrated what was not demonstrable. That you can fly a rocket, recover it vertically on the ramp, on the tower, and flew again whenever you want. That is completely, exactly the opposite of the idea of the aircraft that take off from runway, goes to orbit, and turns back to the runway like the space shuttle, more or less.
Right.
Was. And these big changes was very difficult to tell, because there is a lot of stories that are overlapping one on the other, like a sort of sandwich. And also because Russia has an approach and the United States has another one, still today is valid. And also Chinese, because Chinese inherited some things from United States, because their founder father, Tianhu, was on the jet propulsion laboratory, studied in California. So he took something from United States, but also from the Soviet one.
Yeah.
And it still is valid today. And spaceship represents the extreme victory of the rocketry. The aerodynamics is strictly necessary to move your spacecraft. With all the rest, you have a sort of rocket that takes off and turns back. A sort of joke that is in my company is very popular, tells that NASA also stated that it was impossible to recover a powered rocket.
I was in school when I had people telling me
Yeah.
that as it was happening.
Yes, of
Yeah.
course, but
Yep.
luckily, a SpaceX engineer wasn't aware of it.
Yeah. Or did it in spite of it, one or the other.
Yeah, that's possible too.
They didn't know.
Yeah.
Mm.
No. It's you're
That's it.
describing something that's so unique in this industry that is a part of the story that there were so many people that were just they like space, but they haven't gone all the way into the history of it. And I think your book will help with this. But there's so many things that have happened, and even though well, I want to jump on this too. I have this theory called the Space Conundrum. And so with how much work you guys have done with the history of space, I'd love to know what you think of this. So there's this correlation between societal chaos and space progress, and they seem to happen at the same time. Uh, and I feel like we're in the second space conundrum right now, where things have really taken off chaotically in society, I would say, and even though, let's say, on the U.S. side of things, NASA has a lot of cuts and is going to be distracted, for lack of a better word. Um, there's still a ton of progress in space because of the privatization of a lot of the industry. They can kind of move forward in the U.S. almost without NASA if they had to, or drag NASA along. And this is worst case scenario that I'm talking about. Um, do you guys see that correlation in the history of space? Has that happened in each of the ages, or is that unique to this really big push like we had with the Apollo era to the moon, and now with Mars, I guess, and going back to the moon?
Well, there's an old saying, there's no Buck Rogers without bucks. And the money's coming from somewhere. The money's coming to SpaceX through NASA contracts. So if NASA is cut too much, that could be affected.
Yeah.
But I'll let Davide speak. I think he would have interesting things to say on this since he's in the industry and sees it up close.
Yeah, my view is a bit pessimistic at the moment, to be honest, because with what was happening in the United States, I don't really see a bright future for space travel from organized or sponsored by Western space agencies or society in general. If you look at the Chinese, they are progressing. People might say, yeah, they're not doing anything that we haven't done before. They're putting a space station. We already had a space station for 2 decades. Yes, but look what they're doing. They're doing it, slowly, methodically, and soon they will go on the moon. And people say, oh yeah, but we already went to the moon. Yes, 50 plus years ago, and we haven't come back. And they are going there to stay from the beginning. Actually, this is something also we highlighted in the book. This part that was not in the first edition, the Chinese contribution with the lunar lander, with the new spacecraft that they are developing for travels to the moon or deep space. So I think the future belongs to another country at the moment, the future in space. If we don't move beyond the rhetoric of it's what I would call the JFK syndrome. When JFK said, we need to go to the moon, we should go to the moon, not because it's easy, but because it's hard. Very inspiring speech, absolutely brilliant speech.
Yeah.
But it set the wrong tone for everything else that came up afterwards, because it looks like in order to progress, we need to have a big speech from a charismatic leader in order to progress. And often only for political gain, because we need to go to Mars because I don't know, just because it will look good on the administration, or we need to go to the moon because I don't know, each administration has its own view. So,
and it's gone back and forth,
Yes, and that is really depressing. So there's no this really clear direction, that is being pursued, despite changes in administration. And I'm not only talking about the US. Also in Europe, it's not really that better. So
yeah. Well, and and even NASA's funding has affected, look what we did for the Mars sample return and everyone that was working on that.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. What's happening with it? What's happening? I mean, such an important mission. It looks like it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Guess who's going to retrieve those samples?
China.
Guess who's going to retrieve it? China.
Yeah.
They will.
Yeah.
I bet you they will.
Yeah.
So
I agree with you.
I think
when Artemis 3 will happen, they can order directly noodles from the next Chinese restaurant on the moon.
Most likely. Yeah.
It keeps getting delayed, and
Yeah. I think to come to what you were suggesting, a Space Conundrum, I think there is a relation between space exploration progress, especially for human spaceflight, and societal progress or lack of. And in the 60s, people had a lot of expectations. The future looked bright. There was so much hope that anything could be possible. Anything. You could even power toasters with a nuclear reactor. There were so bizarre ideas. There was such a enthusiasm for technology and what it could bring. Now I feel like we are kind of diverted from that. We don't really have that passion towards that, and also we don't feel that inspired by space flight. And the only way we can think of space flight is because we can plant a flag, on the next celestial body. So I think if society had a little bit more of passion and enthusiasm for just the advancement of humankind in general, maybe also human space flight in particular, could benefit greatly, and we could just progress and do great things.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. I agree with you. I'm usually an optimist, but I'm definitely running on fumes over here. And trying to figure out
realistic optimist.
Yes.
Realistic optimist.
Yeah, that's the engineering half. Yeah, on there. It is fascinating. So part of the Space Conundrum leads to, okay, so if we have our moment again, our Apollo 11 moment, what does that look like? Have we prepped people? Do we have the Walter Cronkites? Do we have the people telling the story and breaking it down to set the groundwork for the moment? And it doesn't feel like that. And to your point, China's the only one with the young, passionate workforce that is also state funded, like the original race. Like it's I think it's not going to be easy for the US.
Also, one of the reasons why China is so progressive is because, at least from what I understand, from what I read, they do value space not as much as a prestige type of thing. Obviously, it brings prestige to their technological prowess, but it also has a way to, as a practical means to advance their economy. Like they are very much interested in mining resources from the moon,
right?
For instance, if it's going to be viable or not, we don't know, but at least they are thinking in those terms. So they kind of see, in my mind, a practical application for space, while we lack that. If we were to find a practical or understand the practical application of space, like a big idea of mine is mining asteroids and the moon for resources, rather than doing it here on Earth. So that could, generate that moment to say, yes, that is something that we really want to do because we want to improve our society, not because we want to show that we are better than others. So I think probably if we had kind of a pivotal change in the way we think, then maybe that could help us to reignite that enthusiasm that you were talking at the time. Because also at the time, JFK, in the 60s, obviously there was this ideological battle between the US and the USSR, and people were inflamed by that. They really felt it, right? That kind of debate. But now we don't feel that. The urgency of saying, yes, space is essential for our well-being, just beyond GPS, without getting lost when you are looking for a place. So if we manage to have that kind of changes in society, getting people tuned up on on thinking space as something better than what it could be or what is shown now, maybe that moment can return. The Apollo era enthusiasm might return. Might.
Yeah.
I think that's a brilliant analysis, and there are lots of it that I hadn't thought of. But I'd like to inject a note of optimism based
Please.
on history. It goes something like this. You made the very wise comment, Alex, about linking culture and the pursuit of space,
Mm.
the way the Russians and the way the Americans did it. And I think the Russian program, because the spacecraft were made, Giuseppe introduced me to this idea, very incrementally, the way they changed their spacecraft. But it makes sense because the Soviets lived in a collective society. And so there's not a lot of room for bold strokes. There's room for slow, thoughtful, minor changes. Our society in this country, one of the main features of our society is individualism.
Mm.
So with each generation
Yes.
of engineers who came to the space program, they didn't say, well, let's change the Apollo capsule a little bit. Let's make a space shuttle, which is an absurd idea. It was a tremendous technological advance. Americans act on fear. Americans are not planners. Attack Pearl Harbor, and you're able to get a country that is able to uproot the Japanese empire from Hawaii to the Japanese islands in 3 years.
Yeah.
You be the first person in space, and Americans respond by saying, we're not only going to catch up with you, we're going to surpass you. Kennedy's speech.
Mm.
So my point of optimism is this is the way I think Americans will get back in the game fully. The Chinese will get to the moon first. And when that happens, any American politician who doesn't say, good God, we've got to exceed them, it's going to be radioactive for them. Then the money will come in.
Yeah.
I think historians generally believe that planning and rationality matters less to most of us than fear and panic. That we as human beings operate more in a climate of fear and desperation than we do rationality. And I think that's what motivates Americans, particularly as a people.
Mm.
Europeans are much better planners than we are. 5-year plans. The Chinese 10-year plans, what do? We haul up the NASA administrator before Congress and beat him with hickory sticks about this year.
Yeah.
What are you doing for my district this year? That will change when somebody beats us to the moon. That's my guess. I don't want to say
Well
it as
said.
prophecy, but that's
Yeah.
my guess. That'll shake us. Americans need to be shaken out of complacency. That
Yeah.
would do it.
I love that. And I think speaking as an American, we we're at our best when we're the underdogs. When we're on
Mhm,
top, we're not our best selves. We need something to
mhm,
be fighting for. And I do see promise in people getting together, American people talking about what they actually believe in. There's many people who are still going through that process now. But I do see people starting to stand up for what they care about, but we don't have any unifying. We used to have God and country. We don't have that anymore. And then what is it at the end of the day that actually brings us together? Um, I think often it's used, people find a common enemy for us to find.
mhm,
Uh,
mhm,
and sometimes it's your neighbor. Honestly, in the US, very often it's been our neighbors. So
mhm,
on the whole, so I think people are getting tired of that. I think even though the chaos of our politics right now seem to get crazier every single day, I think that's pushing people further off the ledge of caring about it, which I think will be good. Um, for people then to just look around and say, well, okay, what's going on here? How do we make this better? But we have a lot to go. So I appreciate the optimistic look because as soon as I realized this space conundrum issue, it has only continued. Uh, but storytelling it really feels like this next age of space is going to be really important because we don't really have one. I think the conversation slips easily into colonialism, right? And, you're going to go there to plant a flag and then, you're going to ruin the resources. That's at least a very popular young perspective on it. Not new at all. Um, where do you guys see the stories of today, especially speaking from outside of the US perspective?
If I can say something, first of all, endorsing partially the vision of Davide and also Michael, let's say, okay, of course, China has embraced the pyramidal approach, one step, not missing any step, not to the moment. Okay, one another, they have reached the stars. I have to make a step back. NASA has lost today its momentum. NASA is a useless agency, I have to say. NASA has not lost its momentum today or yesterday or the day before yesterday. The NASA lost its momentum a certain percentage each decade in the last 40 years. I mean, each time NASA embraced a big, bold, impossible project, except the International Space Station, lost something. I can make a sort of rosarium of X30, X38, X34, and so on. Okay. Each time they put forward.
Oh, we lost you a little bit, Giuseppe.
Do you see?
Yeah, I think we got you back.
You were frozen. Sorry.
Oh, I think you're back.
Okay, thank you. So just to conclude that, in fact, it's true that a lot of young Chinese people is enthusiasts. It's not true that American young people is not enthusiastic about space. Because each time SpaceX made a launch, I see a crowd of young faces that make smiling, they clap their hands, they scream. So they are over enthusiastic. So, I mean, probably SpaceX is able to intercept the very hard part of the young, very interested and very enthusiastic about space, something that NASA failed to accomplish today. Probably this is this kind of narrative. And is not the case that the most Soviet of the space company doing this, because SpaceX, in my opinion, has taken a lot of the space Soviet philosophy era and also some technology, I have to say, and put inside their rockets. They assemble horizontally and put vertically on launch. They use grid fin. They store the liquid oxygen for a long time. That was a Soviet project that was realized for the Buran. It failed the shuttle of the end of the 80s, the copy that was not exactly a copy. In certain it was better than the actual space shuttle. There is a lot of stuff that they took from Russian. And also the approach. Musk and his people is prone to fail. They want to improve one bit at the time. Not big. Okay, now they are big and also dream big things and are doing big things. But they started very, very with the teeny rockets, the Falcon 1, with one engine. This is the approach that probably NASA misses today. I have to say that, in my opinion, NASA have only one chance to go on in the next decades, is to reset themselves and start again from research, from the very, very, very initial part of their activity. Because NASA is born from NACA, as probably Michael knows better than me. That was National Aeronautical Committee Advisory, etc. It was focused on aeronautical research. And NASA itself, in the very first years, was pure research. Even when they was doing the Mercury project. They lost this kind of vision. They became a super industry. They start to think that after Apollo, they can produce everything. No, a space agency can do that. A space agency should make research, offer these results of research to the private company, then exploit to make further progress. Otherwise, there is a lot of public money wasted down the drain. That's my idea, of course.
Yeah.
And in Italy, we are specialized to waste money down the drain. 3,000 years of experience in this field. Believe me, we are really, really experienced on this. You are young.
I agree with Giuseppe. NASA has suffered from entropy for quite a few decades. It's lost its way and it's lost its power. But I'm going to suggest a reason why. I think, go back to Apollo. Why did we get involved? Why did Kennedy promise the American people that we would land on the moon without even consulting with the engineers of NASA? He consulted with Hugh Dryden, and that was about it. Why would he do that? Well, he did it for politics. Why? Because Gagarin's flight and the Bay of Missile crisis occurred within a few weeks of each other. And they were political disasters for Kennedy.
Yeah.
Kennedy was deeply affected by his mistakes with the Bay of Pigs. So he cast around for what he could do to pull up America's reputation. He remembered James Webb had come in at the very beginning of his administration and said, maybe we should think about going to the moon. And somehow he lighted on that. He called in Lyndon Johnson and he said, bring wise people together. Tell me when it can be done and if it can be done. And one of the wise men was Hugh Dryden, who I happen to be writing a biography on right now. And the decision was made to go ahead. And I think America will shake itself and come back to that original point of national purpose with another political crisis. And I think the political crisis, as I said before, could come from another power achieving a goal that Americans will say, that can't happen. We have to shake ourselves, just like we did at Pearl Harbor, and change.
Yeah.
I don't think it will change for reasons of altruism, of goodwill, of anything like that. It will change for reasons of good old-fashioned fear and worry. And the politicians then will be fueled by that. A situation where if you don't support the return to the moon, you're finished politically.
I think the book that we have worked on, actually, it's mostly Michael and Giuseppe. I had the pleasure of adding a contribution to the second edition. Is that, as you pointed out, there you go, seeing all this glory, beautifully printed, which also, by the way, we all think that it's very important to have a book also well printed, because it does give you a different feeling, right? I think we are all part of the generation where we like physical books, not digital books.
Yeah.
And a book like that, it does really give you a good impression. It's solid when you have it in your hands. It does feel good. It does feel good. The reading experience also quite improved. But anyway, what I want to say is the organization in sections, in ages, especially with the addition that we did on this edition, will hopefully highlight how space exploration is progressing, and there's still hope for achieving great things. Despite the pessimism that, in one way or another, we all have expressed so far. So, I should call it realism. It's not pessimism. Let's call it realism. So, because as you pointed out, it's important to have a good story to tell. People get interested in events and topics because of if the story is well told, and also if the story is said in such a way that it can make you think a little bit. And it is something that I want to highlight, that nowadays, because of internet, you can find anything if you want, right? But when we write books, we, at least the three of us, I know that for sure, is that we want to create original content. So we want the story. We want to give the reader something different, a view that, you can read news on the internet by yourself. You can read a page in Wikipedia, but our book is not that. Otherwise, it would be a copy and paste.
Right.
Our book is about, showing the reader a story. What's the underlying, overarching plot that the space exploration has been followed, and where we are now, and hopefully, where we're going next. And maybe we are able to inspire new generations of people. They might say, well, all of this happened before in my country, in the Western society. Now we are slowing down. Why don't we try to, regain the momentum? So hopefully, it can also offer a way to inspire, younger generations, or also, not necessarily engineers, but people that are just interested in space, and maybe, rekindling that kind of enthusiasm that there was like years ago.
Yeah. Well said.
This is what we hope, at least.
Yes. Yeah. And one thing,
and also thanks to podcasts like yours, obviously, these kind of discussions, and spreading the word. That is very important.
Thank you. We're trying. That's the mission, at least. What I find very optimistic and exciting with the fallout of what's happening with the space industry right now, is that Europe, other countries without, or even just, Italy, right? Like being more being more independent in space and not having to rely launch providers from the US, not having to rely on, paying the Russians for rockets or whatever the situation might be. I see a lot of leaders in the European field that are saying we've got to figure this out. And I think it's a really good thing, especially for whatever stories coming next, right? Whatever happens in the future, the more prepared I think we all are to have our own launches, and then reusability, dropping the cost of it, right? You have a model to go off of that clearly works. I'm excited about that as an American, because I think, as a freedom lover, I think that's amazing. I think, I don't like the fact that our politics have tossed programs that millions, potentially billions of dollars have been spent on. So how do you guys feel about it from your perspective? Do you feel the urge to become more independent? Are you looking for new partners and relationships to supplement the chaos over here?
Yeah, I think it's important. If anything, because you want to have like redundancy.
Yeah.
You don't want to rely on one provider only, because when you have a monopoly, then the owner of that monopoly can essentially dictate what they want to do. And they might have an agenda which is a good agenda, but not necessarily might be the best agenda. For instance, personally, I don't really feel the necessity to go to Mars at the moment. So if there are other players, like you mentioned, that they can step up, maybe they might not be becoming as successful as SpaceX, but if there are new players, they can become independent and they can provide their own services. Maybe that might allow also other entities to use those services for other activities, maybe to embrace their own vision. So I think it's important. It's definitely very important. There's a bit of variety in launch services providers, because it might also improve the variety of activities that we want to be focused on. I think this is at least one of the benefits that I would see in allowing other players to come on in the arena.
If I can say one word, I have a rather different vision. I mean, I want to split the current space situation in very two different halves. From one side, civilian, and on the other side, military. From civilian point of view, cooperation is a nice thing, is very welcome. I speak also at the European level. One proof that really very recent news about the Italian Space Agency has awarded SpaceX to carry its own scientific payload on Mars in the very first Starship launch to the Red Planet.
Mm.
Yeah. So in this view, I mean, civilian one, cooperation is a nice thing. It's something you won't pursue. When you move on the military side, you want to be completely independent for the reason that Davide has also introduced. You don't want to depend on anyone. You have to regard also European more or less like a big organism, even if it's not exactly the same, because there are differences among Germany, on Italy, on France, okay? But let's say more or less, it's more or less the same military vision. And furthermore, up to today, we have seen unmanned military space. Okay, now we are entering in the era of manned military space. That means reinforce the idea that you have to be independent. And also in this, Italian Air Force is pioneering because we have a spaceport in Puglia that is in southern Italy that is qualified to launch suborbital aircraft, military suborbital aircraft. And we have military people that are already flown on the Virgin Galactic Air spacecraft last year.
Yeah, you had a whole flight dedicated to
Italian Air Force. Yes, already done. So already we all know about the Space Force in the United States. And my guess that in the next 5 years, Space Force will have people that will fly in space, actually. Probably with Starship, with military version of Starship. Battleship, I don't know, but so. But even a teeny nation like Italy will pursue a military space program that means not only satellites that doing something, it is of course like that even today, but also people doing something in space military. So my vision, my perspective, also coming from my actual job, is that there is a dual vision. In civil space, cooperation is really okay. It's something everyone wants. And there is some money in it. But when you move on the military side, no. I want to do as much as possible by myself. And this is the indicator for the medium future. And also we have to prepare to the idea that space will be the space people. The people that comes in space will be of three great categories. People that go from exploration and so some entertainment, like orbital flights or touristic, whatever, but it's very small amount. People that will work in space doing something. I don't know really what they will do, but for sure there will be some job in space.
Yeah.
And people will do military activities in space. Manned military activities. This will radically change the paradigm of the astronauts that comes inherited from the 20th century. The 21st century will be rather different, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think what you brought up is super important. One, the tie between the military and the civilian side, which I want to touch on in a second, but touching on the definition of an astronaut. I mean, already that definition is very malleable compared to the classical definition of what an astronaut is. And it's definitely caused, especially here in the US, a rift between the people who are Apollo, born, raised in that culture, and what's considered or called an astronaut now. It's a very divisive thing, and people have not really scratched the surface on what does an astronaut mean now. So I think what you're describing is,
I think there was a few years back I think it was the FAA that they redefine what an astronaut is. It has to be someone that essentially is contributing to the advancement of space flight safety. And there was some other requirements to the effect that essentially if you're just there for a joyride, you don't have the right to be called an astronaut.
Right.
Which I think is fair enough. I mean, an astronaut should be a professional that has been trained for accomplishing work in space. It's like, if you're flying an airplane, you're not a pilot.
Right.
So no, what I mean, if you're flying as a passenger, you're not a pilot, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, millions of people would be pilots by now. So no, I think probably it's good. It still doesn't remove anything from the experience. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
If I had a chance to go in space, even just as a space flight participant or tourist or whatever you want to call it, I don't really care.
Yeah.
It doesn't remove anything from the experience.
I agree.
There is a debate around the terms astronaut, because there is radical visions. For some people, astronaut is whoever goes in space for whatever reason, either to sing a song, I don't know, but happen. Or on the other side, there is people that takes the Tom Wolfe's book in hand like a Bible, say this is the right stuff. Astronaut is one pilot spacecraft, is very, very super hard space jockey. Don't use this term for wacky people that comes around in space or in suborbital. I don't know, frankly, because word is a word.
Yeah.
Up to the 19th, our vision of astronaut as a sort of superhero.
Yeah.
Okay, that comes exactly from the right stuff era. And this is typical American.
Yes.
Russian always, for technical reason, considered the crew more passenger than really pilots, because Russia was always commanded the spacecraft for ground.
Right.
Crew on board was only a sort of spare device if something happened to the communication.
Yeah.
While this is very early in the space race. Gagarin was a 26, 28 common pilot, was not a test pilot, was not 14-year-old test pilot, okay, who have 1,000 of flight hours. No, there were regular pilots taken from the fighter squadron that some 1,000, 3,000, 2,000 of hours of flight, came launch with a parachute. Okay, that's nice.
Right.
No, NASA wanted to have the best of the best. They chose the best of the best, and it remains. No, if you think about Armstrong, Aldrin, these people was far beyond the regular pilot.
Yeah.
And this kind of powerful icona set up in the mind of the people for decades along.
Yeah.
And now we are facing other kind of astronauts. So what is an astronaut? Is a Superman who pilot a space fighter, or is someone that goes into space? Davide is right. If you're a passenger on an airplane, you are not a pilot. You're not an aviator, let's say. But nevertheless, you fly. I don't know if there will be some difference between astronaut, like space pilot, and space passenger, or probably passengers in general. I don't know. Or some will remain astronauts for all the people who goes in space.
Yeah.
I don't want to give a buck about it, because it depends by fashion. And fashion depends by times. I don't know.
Yeah. What about you, Michael?
I worked with a couple of astronauts when I worked for NASA, and I saw them pretty often. And to me, they seemed like engineers who flew. They were like anybody else, practical, intelligent, not flamboyant in the least. In fact, I was shocked one time when Bill Dana, the last man to fly the X-15, we were just talking about something, I don't remember what. And Bill was older at the time, probably younger than me now. And he said, the end of the discussion was, Bill said, well, there's a lot to be said for contentment, which is not something you expect the heroic pilot to say.
Yeah.
So I found them remarkable people, but remarkably accessible, certainly more intelligent than the average person, but nothing heroic about them at all. Nothing
Mm.
you would point out as saying, Vance Brand was one. There were several others. Good, solid, reliable people that you'd want in a crisis.
Right.
That kind of thing more.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I'd like to a lesson I think we can draw just from the structure of our book,
Mm.
and that is, what spirit do we want to take into space exploration?
Mm.
Because we have two different spirits. In the first instance, the first 20 years, an intense spirit of competition. In the second 20 years, a softening of that and the spirit of cooperation. And we ask the question in the third period, which direction are we going to go in? Because it could be either one.
Yeah.
It could be both at once. Um,
Yeah.
we have more participants, which could suggest more competition. But we have the lesson of the second 20 years where cooperation, and perhaps the European Space Agency is the ultimate picture of what cooperation can do. We have that as an example. So I think we carry human nature, of course, into space. And we have a question to ask ourselves. As Abraham Lincoln said, do we want the better angels of our nature to prevail? Or do we want competition, bad feeling, mistrust, and all the other worst part of human emotions to predominate? And I think it's a question that we can answer and consciously, but I don't know what the answer will be. And I don't think the book tries to answer that because we don't know.
For the next one we
That's
can try
it.
the answer. But it's a good point anyway, what Michael was saying. Because I met a few astronauts. I didn't work with them like Michael, but I met a few, and most of them actually, they are really down to earth people. Seriously, you can talk to them with anything, with the most mundane, domestic issues that they might have at home, from how to bring the kids to school to, I don't know, the house being messy and needing cleaning. So, and I think it's good if people also kind of see astronauts like superheroes. I mean, they're very competent people, obviously. That's obviously very determined, focused, because the the job places, the job opportunities are few in between. So obviously, only people that are very dedicated can achieve that. To get that kind of type of role. But actually, they're very normal people. So that might also maybe inspire anyone, in thinking space is, after all, something that can be, is within our human dimension. At the end of the day, yeah, it's a cool place. It's completely alien to what our reality is. But yeah, that maybe might also help to see human space flight, as something that is more approachable, and maybe, with more players available, with a reduction in the cost to access to space, more launch providers, especially for crewed missions. Maybe more people might go into space, and that might help even to normalize more these activities and help, including space into our, existence and economy. Obviously, as Michael pointed, we will still bring our, the bad traits of our human nature, but maybe that could help to build a better future, for when that space can be expanded more than it is now.
Yeah.
Something to think about for the next book.
I like that.
That's right.
Well, we're past the hour here, gentlemen. Giuseppe, I'd love to hear your kind of like final thought. I feel like that's kind of what we've been doing here for a second. Do you have any like final thought, maybe a lesson for the folks out there, just related to space?
First of all, I want to thank you and all the folks that are listening or seeing us, and the patience that, to listen us talking about space. And the lesson is my personal lesson is that the good things comes always when you do teamwork, even a book. Even I always said a team of people and a co-authors in this case. Never thought to feel something alone. Really, I want to taught young people the value of the teamwork for the book, for whatever you want, doing together, doing all ensemble. For the rest, I hope that this book will be a success as big, probably better also than the previous one. It was already successful. Otherwise, there will be no second edition. And buy it, of course, if you like. If you don't like it, but you have already bought it, thank you the same, no problem. Probably it would be also a third edition, and we talk together with the third edition. Because books as an age, like the wine could be a good wine with the age and past the years of bad wine. I hope that this book will be a good wine, but also we always intended like a sort of series, because the space field in this age is continuously changing.
Yeah.
Okay. In the 19th, simply something that never changed. When I start my own professional career, it seems like all sort of middle age. Now nothing changes. Now we are in the middle of revolution, American Revolution, French Revolution, and whatever else, Illuminism, probably Industrial Revolution, and things are running very, very fast. And the books that always will be books, whatever form they will have to follow the times. So we are here for this, to make a chronicle. And I want to share the table with my friends. Michael, Davide, it's up to you.
Awesome.
No, I don't want to add anything else. You said it. You said it all. Yeah. Hopefully, who is listening will enjoy the book, and then we'll appreciate also the artwork Michael and Giuseppe put into it, and then maybe we will see you again in the next edition.
Well,
Fantastic.
I'm not the smartest person, but I know when I hear a good ending, and that's a good ending.
That's it, folks. That's how we'll end it. Thank you, gentlemen, all for coming on, sharing about the complete book of spacecraft, talking about space and history and all of that. Spread love, spread science, stay curious, and let's all work together to build a fantastic future for all of us. See you next time.
See you, Alex. Next time.
See you. Ciao.